Well, today we're working on that a front axle. It's the front axle assembly. I think they told me it was a little newer than this, but we're looking at the casting numbers. It's out of a 2000 Chevy pickup truck, half-ton, obviously four-wheel drive, into the front axle, like I said. Anyway, I broke the one in the Avalanche. I have not made any videos on it. I will show you that, what happened. I don't think I made any video. Anyway, it doesn't make any difference. I'm falling way behind on videos. By now, this is like mid-July, and I don't know when this video will come out because I'm way behind on getting them out. But either way, I have to replace at least part, if not all, of the front axle in that '04 Avalanche. These are interchangeable. I believe I looked it up. I did not get really serious into it. Somewhere between like 98 and '07 Classic. Because sometime in '07 they changed from what I'm considering the old style to what the newer body style is, and I know they've changed it since then a little bit, well, probably a couple of times since then. But anyway, what we got is this is supposed to be a 373. I really don't have any way to tell because all of the tags are either wore off or gone. It just wrote on it 373. Now they were supposed to check there's a tag, and I'll show you that sometime, in the glove box of all these new Chevys. Probably on almost any car there's a tag somewhere, and it lists several different things, and one of them, it's real easy to see because my '06 crew cab two-wheel drive I had a 323 rear gear. 373 was real common in most of the four-wheel drives. You can also get a 410, I was told, but I don't know how hard that is to get a hold of. I've been told it's pretty hard, but don't quote me on that because some of them probably had them because of either ordering that way, maybe where they're from. Depends on the engine size, possibly. I can see a 4.8 having a 410 gear because of how small the engine is, trying to move a 5,500 pound or 6,000 pound vehicle. Right? It doesn't make a difference. This is what I was told. It has a leak. I have never took one of these apart before, and I believe it or not, it's not the seals. This looks dirty on this end. I'm not sure if you can see it, but everything came from the top because there's almost nothing underneath, and this is the top. This, if you were looking at it, if you crawled underneath, you'd be looking at the side sitting on the table. This is actually the top. So anything that's on top here obviously had to have come either from this vent tube, which should go up there. It's either leaking around this big seal or it's leaking from the engine down, which is very common on them, usually steering, because these hold 80, 90 gear oil. But my leak, I'm going to move this around. I cleaned this thing yesterday. They're not real heavy to deal with. I tore up my wrist. I don't know what I did. Don't get me started. It still managed. Oh, I know why. And put the drain plug in. I drained the oil out of it, obviously not. And here, this is the plug. It's got a lot of metal and garbage on it, which of course is not uncommon, but you can see the difference in size when I wipe it off. So there is some metal shavings in this. I don't know whether to use this axle or not. Yes, I paid $300 for it. Put that plug back in here, since I just took this up, made a mess with it. I'm going to show you where the leak was. My wrist won't let me do very much. I don't think I'm going to be able to get this thing swapped today. Might get close, but the difference in draining or replacing the whole axle is just a little more work. It's not necessarily a lot harder, but it is a little more work. And normally these things leak at the seals. There's a few videos out there with people replacing the seals, whether it be the inner or outer. This would be in the passenger side. To replace the seal, I'm going to make sure you're even looking at something here, since I got my hands all over. You're not even looking at what I'm looking at here. Yeah, sort of see what's going on here. Well, basically, my leak is here. It leaks between where this outer shaft, be the passenger side, hooks to the case. To replace the axle seal, you have to take this apart anyway because the axle has to come out from that direction. So I'm going to take these 5 bolts out. Now there's some parts in here. Looking at some of the videos I've seen, you got to be real careful. It probably ought to be laying on its side to do this, to take this apart so it doesn't kind of come all apart. But I'm going to loosen all the bolts up here because I cannot get leverage anywhere else, again, because I'm damaged and it's my fault. I don't know what I did to it. So I can't even really run a hammer. This is pretty bad. I'm trying to do left-handed hammer. But anyway, I know this is going to turn some because obviously it's sitting on an axle. Now, nothing locks on these until, you know what, I may get the impact out. This is how it's going to be. Anyway, I really don't want to get a ratchet on this. I just don't think I can do this. I probably shouldn't have started this video until I had everything ready to go. I don't have my hose strung out for my deal. If you don't see the Mustang in here, I took it over my mother-in-law's garage because I needed space. The Avalanche is 100 degrees here every day. Heat index is, today it's supposed to be 107 to 109. And I can't personally work out in this stuff. I just cannot do it. I've got the air conditioner on. I turned it on this morning at about, I don't know what time I turned it on. Probably 6. It was 82 in here this morning, and it is 77 now. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but it makes a big difference. Let me get my hose strung out. I know you're just looking at that axle. I'm getting there. Problem is, this compressor needs to kick on. It's probably going to kill my air conditioner. Hang on, I'm still working on this. I got to make sure it's even. No, it's not even plugged in. Wonder what I did. Now I got to listen to this thing fire up. Well, sorry about that. I was not prepared. Plus, I just cracked myself in the face with a tool falling off the shelf. Yeah, I'll be able to get all these anyway. Appear to be Loctited in too. Yes, there's still one bolt left. Come on. Oh boy. Now let me see, now that I move it around, what are you looking at now? Oh, big fat nothing. Okay. And it just killed the breaker. I've got too much stuff on this one breaker. Everything is new except that wire going that direction. And I need to run a separate wire to that compressor. You know, originally there's a big black wire that's supposed to run in the back. My big compressor was supposed to be in the back here before I bought the building. So I kind of pre-wired it for that, and I never separated the rest of this 110 stuff out. And now I'm going to have to. I knew that might happen. Alright, now it's not going to let me get on it. It didn't hurt so bad, this wouldn't be so hard. I don't know what it did to my wrist. We went on vacation, everything was fine, in extension, and came back. I really didn't do anything after I got back, but apparently I did something. Can't move it up and down without excruciating pain. Gonna see somebody here in a little while about this, because if it ends up being like carpal tunnel, which I don't think it is, but you never know. It also could be something worse. Could even be some type of arthritis. That's something I've been kind of fighting as I'm getting older. Anyway, just give her a little tap, and as you can see, separated really easy. Probably going to get some oil out of this. When you pull this apart, I'm hoping you can see this. You got to be real careful. There's a spring, there's a shifting fork. But basically, I didn't mean for that inner to pull out. It's not really supposed to. There, it went right back in. So this is it. Let me see if you're looking at that now. Somewhat. Okay, looks a little bit better. Basically what you got, they just have a little bit of a sealer around this. It's not very much. There's not a gasket, it's just sealant. And it's really thin, plasticky looking, it's kind of rubbery. But anyway, most of the videos I've seen, they weren't leaking there. That was always the axle seal itself. Now while I'm in here, I should probably replace that axle seal, and I'm probably not going to, because I'm an idiot and I want to do this 2 or 3 times. I'm trying to get this oil sopped up so it doesn't come out. Anyway, what I'm looking at here is to do the seal itself, you actually start taking the clutch fork, which is a pretty simple deal. This thing comes apart in one unit. And this is tapered on this side, and it's flat on the top. And you'll see that the housing is tapered here. It's got to go this way, so don't get this thing, because this obviously comes off here because it's a shifting fork. So don't get that thing turned upside down or whatever and blow it. If you try to put it back together, especially if you try to pull up the bolts, you'll end up tearing something up. And then this is actually in a snap groove deal. Once that comes out, the whole thing comes apart. Real simple. Like I said, I'm not really necessarily have to do that. Like I said, I don't know. He said this thing had 120,000 miles on it. I looked at several of the people's videos, and none of them looked this bad. And I didn't have that much garbage on the drain plug. So I'm going with, like most salvage yards, they'll tell you one thing. And I know they're supposed to follow it, but this axle could have been replaced, because I swore the guy told me it came out of an 04 low mileage truck, and this thing is date coded 2000. So basically same as the engine that's in this thing, 2000, 2001. So anyway, okay, here's what happened, and I'm not really going to show you, crawl underneath there and show you, but basically I broke this side of this. This thing was on, the Avalanche was on the jack stand when I pulled the transfer case, and I had it lifted up high enough that even on my jack, with transfer case on it, I could actually roll it underneath. So I had the thing pretty high in the air. I jacked the front up first, put that up there, and then I put the bottom on there. And this washer just fell off. I just seen it down there. It actually goes up there. It was stuck to the axle piece that was sticking out. Anyway, long story short, what ended up happening, see, now that this is a gauge, I can turn the other side. You can't see what I'm doing there. I'm talking to myself now. Anyway, put the transfer case back in, and I jacked the front up first, and then I went to the back. That's how I set it on the stands. When I went to go get it off the stands, the jack was already in the front because I'd had the engine supported when I had the transfer case out. And I went ahead and jacked the front up instead of the back. Now, understand how a jack works. It's on wheels for a reason. When you jack them up, all right, when you start lifting that up, the area you're jacking on is moving back or forward, or back and forth, depends on, you know, back on the how high you're lifting it. And so on wheels, if you notice, you start jacking, you'll hear it, and you'll actually see that the wheels on the jack, it's actually moving because everything is staying centered as it goes up. Well, by doing the front first, the rear axle has enough swing. You have a little bit of movement on the rear axle. When it's on stands, though, all four of them, especially on the front, there's no movement there. The back, you still have a little bit possibly with the roll, since your axle is round tube, and most of your jack stands are set to go on those, and so there could possibly be movement. Generally, there's not, but there is possibility of movement. And the front, there's almost never. It depends on how you get to jack stands. There's no way it was going to move in the front with the way I did it. That's why when I jacked the back, I didn't have any trouble. Anyway, long story short, when I put the back, I jacked the front up first. It rained. I had to have a couple of boards between the jack and the center section I was jacking on. There's actually a cross member in the front that's right in front of this. I did not have the skid plate on because I didn't know if I'd fixed my problems with the transfer case. I did not. So I didn't have the skid plate on. I jacked this thing up. I got the stands out, and when I started letting it down, the jack starts moving and then quit moving. It hit a rock, it hit something, and quit moving. The boards were soaking wet. I started hearing them crack, and I kind of panicked, and I tried to set the jack down as fast as I could because I knew trying to jack it back up, it was already too late for that. Once the wood started moving away from the jack and away from the frame, it was done. So I dropped it as quick as I could. The problem was I didn't drop it fast enough. When the suspension came down and hit, the boards came loose, separated from the jack. When it came down faster, it actually made contact with the center section. It didn't look like it hit it very hard. But the center section is rubber mounted. It moved. This side of the shaft is actually bolted to the frame. I don't want to pick this up, I might lose my axle. That mount is permanent to the frame. So the only movement I had was these two here. This did not move. So the weak link here ended up being this right here where this flange is, where it mounts this tube, and it actually cracked that thing about halfway around. At the bottom, of course, because when it hit that, everything moved here on this side did not move, and it actually cracked it. I didn't notice it at first, and I took off down the road and just to see if I fixed the transfer case issue, and I didn't. I drove it about 5 miles, and I came back and when I pulled up in the driveway, went to go shut it off, I smelled burning oil. It's like, I just put a motor in this, there's no way it's leaking oil. So I crawl underneath the hood, I'm looking, I don't see anything leaking, I look underneath, I see a puddle, and I crawl underneath there, and sure enough, I've actually cracked this housing. Now, here's something interesting though. This is one solid piece. That there I'm looking at has been welded before. So it's possible that it was had been broke before and somebody had welded it up, which I could have possibly done that, saved my $300, but I don't have any way to weld aluminum, and I knew taking this apart with as many moving pieces as in this, if this thing gets off a little bit, I didn't want any issues or problems. So I just went ahead and bought a whole nother axle. Well, I was just going to drop it in until I pulled the plug and I saw how much material's on it. I don't want to separate this case out. This is the only piece I need, really. So it'd be a lot easier just to crawl underneath there, pull the 5 bolts that hold, or is it 6? 6 bolts that hold the CV on, pull the 2 bolts here that hold it to the frame, and then pull these 5 bolts. Of course, drain the oil first. And I could pull just this half out and then reseal this, put this back up, and I would be done. $300 is kind of expensive. I found one of these on eBay for $100, and I probably should have done that. But when he told me it was a low mileage, I'm sitting there telling myself, well, you know, maybe I ought to just throw a lower mileage one in there. And he wants the old one back. I may not bring it back to him right away. I may hang on to it for a bit. I don't know. Anyway, this is how you take this apart. If you really wanted to, if you needed to pull the axle, this actually will pop out. It's just a spring clippy little deal. Put a couple of screwdrivers underneath there, pop this out, and then this thing will slide right off of that, and you can replace that seal at the end of that, the shaft, you know, the shaft seal. And I ought to buy one and replace it because it's not leaking right now, but I know as soon as I put it together. But it's honestly not that hard to get this side out to replace this seal. So I probably am not going to do that because, again, I'm half idiot. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, and then when I get the other side out, I'll show you what happened to it, and maybe I'll even show you putting this back in. So I just kind of wanted to show you. I mean, like I said, if we wanted to go further, I could go ahead and pop this gear off because it's just, this is the engager. This is how that engages. When this motor, separate motor, pushes on that, it actually pushes on something in there that allows both sides to click, you know, to engage. And like I said, it's not. There's other videos out there on how to replace just the seal if that's what you were doing, but you have to pull this to replace this side of the seal. So I've kind of showed you how to do that. The rest of it's not that difficult. So, all right. Well, there is some differences in the ears. I figured there was. I have a feeling this would have bolted up and probably worked just fine, but because I decided to take the side off, well, obviously because of the leak I told you about, then decided just to go ahead and separate those 2 out and just put this piece on that side. It's not as simple as that. This is the shaft that's out of the Avalanche, and you may or may not be able to see this, but the C-clip holder on that is here. Here's the one out of the one I bought. The C-clip is way up here. It uses a gear that goes in the center of the clutch fork, where this is all one piece and that gear is not there. It's part of this deal here. So they are different internally. The shaft, or the actual housing, is the same. I went ahead and pulled both shafts. I went ahead and buy a seal and put it in this, since obviously now it's going to have a different shaft in it. And I'm just going to take the pieces out of the 04 and put in this housing and put it together. I don't know if the actuator is the same yet. They look close, but they're turned a little bit different. And I'm going to turn them upside down here in a minute and look to see if the actual plug-in's the same. Otherwise, I'll just take the one off of there and put it on here. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. But the reason I had to replace that's not supposed to be 2 pieces. I broke that booger. It was actually cracked about halfway, 3/4 of the way around, and then I just dropped it on the floor a minute ago and finished it off. So anyway, there are some differences. Had I left everything together, it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Like I said, I had to fix that leak no matter what. But seeing as how I got it apart this far, I'm going to go ahead and buy a seal for this housing. And I've checked the axle size as far as, you know, make sure that they're the same, and they are. So they just made some changes over the years. I'm not sure why, but that's what I'm doing. And then another project, I noticed the radio didn't pick up any stations, and I was walking by here and I realized it had an antenna and it's missing. I've already pulled the plastic cover that was here off, and it was busted off, and it's in multiple pieces. And I watched a video on somebody replacing this, and it looked like a complete pain in the butt. He had the dash pulled. I don't know if you've got to do all that or not, but I've pulled a dash on one of these before, and it is not as fun as it sounds. So what I'm going to do is I drilled the piece out that was in there, and I'm going to find a antenna that's black and will screw in there partially. I'll tap it to whatever size it is, and I'm going to JB weld the crap out of that, and that's going to be good enough. So whether it lasts very long or not, I don't know, but it's what I'm going to do, because I am not going to put any more money or time into this thing than I have to. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you though that there is a difference in some of the internal components, and I did not know that coming into it. That's what happens. This is how you learn though. You got to take them apart. This had to be fixed. I could not allow that leak because it was leaking good. Sitting here on the floor, it left a puddle on the floor. And then back of my pickup, it left a puddle just sitting in there for 3 days. It left pretty good puddle. So it had to come apart. There was no way around that. But did I have to do this? No. I pulled the drain plug on mine. It looked just as bad as the one that came in that I took out of this other one. And there was a lot of metal shavings in it. I did not check the metal shavings in this one. The oil that came out, it was really dark and dirty. This had been replaced, it looks like, before. And you know, I thought that was welded before, and it wasn't. It just the way it looked the way the casting was broke, it looked like it had been welded, but it actually hadn't. So when I felt up in there, the way it broke, like I said, it just kind of seemed like it, but it's not. So it actually just you know, pressure in the wrong place. Aluminum can't take it. And actually, nothing can take it if you put enough pressure on it in the wrong place. So anyway, guys, that's what I'm doing, and I'm going to go get a seal and some oil and some type of an antenna, and we'll be back.